All this talk about book buying bans and book hauls and unhauls, but what about books you want so bad but can't buy because of your book buying ban? That's the video. Enjoy. Hi! Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Annie and I primarily read fantasy, literary, and thriller books, and on this channel I primarily document my reading journey, all the things I'm reading and enjoying, as well as really anything else I have going on in my life. I don't have a vlog for you this week. I got a little sick last week and I'm still feeling a little raspy, so I apologize if you can hear that. But because I don't feel up to filming a vlog, I wanted to provide you with something in the meantime. So this video I have for you is titled "The Books I Desperately Want to Buy But Cannot Buy," because I have a book buying limit that I have set for myself. I only am allowing myself to buy 12 books this year, aka one per month. In case you're curious, in January I spent that on Legendborn, and in February I bought Ministry of Time. We are now in March, so I guess I could buy a book, and perhaps I will buy one of these books I say I cannot buy. But for now, I currently am buying no books, and I'm really trying to limit the amount of reading that I do from a book I purchase rather than using the library or using Libby or using any other way I can obtain a book that feels a little less wasteful. I also have a totally full bookshelf, so I really shouldn't be obtaining any books, or I should at least buy another bookshelf. And right now I don't have any plans to buy another bookshelf, so I really need to limit my spending. But before I get into the actual books, I wanted to go over the categories that I have for the type of books that I cannot buy. So the first category is books I've already read. The second category is books that are not available at my library. The third category is pretty in prose, and the fourth category is pretty in cover. I'll just get on into the books, and we'll start with category 1. The first category is books I have already read. This category is basically indicating to me I've already read the book, so my excuse for having it on the shelf is pretty limited, other than I might think it's pretty or I really like the book and I would just love to revisit it. The first book I have for you is the second book in the Legendborn series. I know I mentioned that I purchased Legendborn in January, but I would really love to have Bloodmarked and Oathbound, which is coming out tomorrow as I'm filming this. I loved Bloodmarked. I binge read it after I finished Legendborn. I got it digitally, so I have a copy virtually, but I don't have the physical copy, and I keep thinking to myself that I would love the physical copy because there are some things that I really could see myself noting or bookmarking or annotating, and I'm really deeply obsessed with this book. If you're unfamiliar with the Legendborn series, it's a Arthurian legend secret society type book. It is set at the University of North Carolina, and essentially there is a secret society that is fighting demons, but the demon attacks are basically getting more involved and complicated and worse, and they're now dealing with that and what's gonna happen, and the idea is that there might be a war on the humans versus demons. The second book I have for you is the Beartown trilogy. I actually have only read the first two books in Beartown, the first book being titled Beartown and the second book being titled Us Against You. The Beartown trilogy is basically centered on a small rural hockey town that faces a dilemma when their star player commits an atrocious act of violence, and the books center on how they deal with that and hypermasculinity and how a sports town is affected by a situation like that. And Beartown is phenomenal, so is Us Against You, and I really enjoyed it. Frederick Bachman is a tremendous writer, and I would love to go through and reread and annotate some of my favorite sections. And I'd also, of course, love to have the winners once I eventually finish off the series. The third and final book for this category is The Sword of Kaigen. The Sword of Kaigen is a standalone fantasy series that centers on a small town that is like a warrior town and very traditional, very much stuck in their ways. The book follows a mother and son, and the mother has a history of being a warrior, but due to social norms is no longer really able to talk about that part of her life. But as war kind of looms on the horizon, it becomes very clear she cannot hide that part of her past anymore. And the book kind of grapples with that and her relationship with her son and her husband and all the other characters in the book. Now listen, I want this book so bad. I listened to it on Audible, and I think it is one of the best, if not the best, standalone fantasy books I've ever read. It is just so phenomenal, and I cannot believe that there's not a whole series with the main mother character or any of the other parts of it. I do know that there is books in this world, but not specifically on these characters. But these characters are the ones I would love to return to. But the Sword of Kaigen is really phenomenal, and I really wish I could buy it. So that one's the one I'm feeling like most heartbroken that I do not own and cannot hold in my hands right now. Okay, so moving on to category 2, which is not available at my library. These are books that I would love to read, and I don't know how I'm gonna get them. Probably eventually I will purchase these, or I will obtain them via an audiobook service, or I'll request it from my library, something of that sort. But currently they're not available, and I keep thinking, I want to read this, but I can't even put a hold on it because it's not available. The first book I have in this category is called Bad Gays, A Homosexual History, and it is basically trying to put the villains of queer history on center stage. And I think that that is such a phenomenal premise for a book. It is such an intriguing concept, and I think that it is a really fascinating take to look at the villains rather than the icons in queer history, because it is a very nuanced and complex history, and we maybe should not always look at the icons, but acknowledge that there are some deeply scary people who have been part of our history as well. So I'm really excited to read that one eventually, but it's not available in my library, and it's kind of been hard to find in general, so we'll see, hopefully soon. The second book I have is called Body's a Bad Monster. It is a poetry collection by Rowan Perez, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, also known as Inkskinned. For the Tumblr girlies, you should know who Inkskinned is. Inkskinned is a tremendous writer that went very, very viral on Tumblr, and I would say is still viral to this day. I've been a big lover of Inkskinned back since I downloaded a Tumblr account way back when, and I would just love to read this and hold it in my hands. It's not at my library because I think it's a little too indie for a mainstream library, but I might request it because I think I have a legitimate reason. I think other people would really enjoy this too. And if you're curious what the poetry collection is about, it's primarily about trauma and freedom and exploring how those interconnect. So hopefully I'll be reading it soon. The final book I have in this category is called American Teenager: How Trans Kids Are Surviving Hate and Finding Joy in a Turbulent Era. This book follows 8 transgender and non-binary teens across the United States and how they deal with triumphs, struggles, and just their daily lives. And I think that this is such a necessary read in 2025. We are living in a very difficult time and things are very chaotic. And I think that this is such an interesting portrayal. And I love that it just goes into the daily lives and what everything looks like on a daily basis rather than these big overall struggles that they also might be facing. I also think as someone who semi-works in education, this is a really important read because I would love to understand more about the transgender teenagers and youth that I might encounter or work with through my job. Moving on to category 3, which is pretty in prose. These are supposed to be parentheses. This category is basically just books that didn't fit in my first 2, so I haven't already read them and they are available at my library, but I still want them anyway, and also these writers are all famously like beautiful writers, so I want to own them for that reason, but also because I love when a good prose book is in my hands because you really can feel it a little more, and if I wanted to, I could annotate and note all the favorite little lines. The first book I have in this category is Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. I am a huge Sally Rooney girl. I own her other books all on my bookshelf, and Normal People in particular holds a very special place in my heart, so I would love to have this on my shelf. Intermezzo in particular centers on 2 brothers who really have nothing in common but are kind of pulled together by grief and entering this like new phase of their lives and how they will handle that. It reminds me in premise to A Real Pain, but I haven't read it, so I cannot say if it is accurate. But A Real Pain, the movie that came out with Jesse Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin, supporting actor winner at the Oscars. A Real Pain is about two brothers, or two, I think they're cousins actually, who go to travel to Poland to really explore their family's history and delve deep into their past. But they really have limited things in common, and Jesse Eisenberg is a very reserved type, while Kieran Culkin feels very eccentric and different. I don't know, I think that Intermezzo kind of speaks to those tones as well, but I haven't read it, so take all that with a grain of salt. Intermezzo is a book I have attempted to buy multiple times, but my issue with it is I refuse to purchase it in hardcover. I own every Sally Rooney in paperback, and I also think the Intermezzo paperback is very beautiful, so I will not be getting it until I can get it in paperback, but I can't find it in paperback, and now we're in my 2025 book buying like restriction, and I tried to buy it in 2024 and couldn't find it anywhere. Can we release this wide release paperback soon, please? Come to Chicago, please? So that's why I haven't read Intermezzo yet. The second book in this category is The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. I really would love to read The Goldfinch. I've held off on it for a long time because I just wasn't sure if I was ready to go back to Donna Tartt, but I've been thinking about The Secret History a lot lately. I think it might be time. I need to go back to Donna Tartt. Her writing is so stunning, the worlds she creates are so interesting, and The Goldfinch is such an interesting premise for a book as well. If you're unfamiliar, The Goldfinch centers on this young boy who survives a terrorist attack, and during all that, I believe he steals the painting The Goldfinch, and that brings him into like the art world and the crime world, and things get very dangerous and chaotic. I was seeing some clips like going viral from the Goldfinch movie that I believe came out in 2019, and that made me think, you know, maybe it's time. Maybe it's time for The Goldfinch. So I think that this one I should probably just get from my library, but I would love to have The Secret History to have a little friend and on my shelf. But for now, it'll have to wait. Maybe that'll be the one I spend my March dollars on, but we'll see. The final book I have in this category is Little Women. And if you saw my previous vlog, you would have noticed that I explicitly said I wanted to purchase Little Women so bad. But I recently watched the 2019 version with my friend again. I haven't seen it since 2019, but I remembered how good of a story it is, and I've never read the book, which I think is very out of character for me. It feels like such a book that I would be interested in and read, and I'm just surprised I haven't read it yet. If you are totally living under a rock, just for your reference, Little Women centers on the Marsh sisters, and as they go through pretty much from childhood to adulthood and handle grief, sadness, happiness, love, loss, all those things. And, you know, it's a famous classic. It's one of like the great portrayals of women in, I want to believe, the 1800s. So I would love to read it. I would love to own it because I don't own many classics. I think I only own Pride and Prejudice, Emma, and Les Mis. So I would love to start expanding my classics collection. And I've been really reluctant because I wasn't sure where to start. And I think Little Women could definitely be the one. Okay, we're now moving on to my final category, which is pretty in cover. I did the parentheses better this time. This category is basically books that I think look so beautiful, I would love to own them. I have not read most of them. I'll establish more what I mean by that. But I just think they're so beautiful, and I just would love to have them on my shelf and look at them and admire them. And honestly, at least one of these I'm pretty confident I'm gonna eventually buy. But, you know, the point is for now, I'm not buying it. I'll hold off. I'm gonna be resistant. I'm gonna try my best to not overconsume, but I want this book so bad. And I'll tell you which one it is. The first book on the pretty in cover category is Priory of the Orange Tree, and also A Day of Fallen Night, because that is what actually made me look at Priory of the Orange Tree. Priory is the one I'm actively reading and the one I do actually want to buy very badly. I put it on my Christmas wish list last year and did not receive it, much to my lament. The Priory of the Orange Tree is basically a book series about this world where there are dragons. Dragons are a known entity, they call them worms, but we are looking at a couple different perspectives, one being a queendom that the dilemma is she does not have an heir, and there are continual assassin attacks on her life. And another perspective we're following in that saga is an outsider to this queendom who is basically caring for the queen, and she is really helping her and protect her in secret. So that is one of the main perspectives. But then at the same time, we're also looking at this girl who's training to be a dragon rider, and we're also looking at these people who have left the queendom and gone to do other things either by their own choice or by force. I just think it is a beautiful book so far. I'm 200 pages in and I love it, but also it truly two of the most stunning covers on the book community I've ever seen. I want to own them so bad. They are thick boys, so they would take up space on my bookshelf I don't have, but I think that they are so wonderful and I really want to own them. And you know what? I will own them at some point. Like, I'm sorry, I'm trying to be not a consumer, trying to not consume as much, but I want them so bad. I'm sorry, I want them so bad. The next book I have on this list is Faebound, which I don't really know much about other than I know it's about two sisters who get exiled and then encounter a fae court. But this cover, it is so pretty. The pinks and blacks and the accent of yellow, and I believe it's a big tree on the right. I don't know what else that would be. It's just so, so beautiful. And it is a romantasy book, which I don't think, to my knowledge, I've read any romantasy. I guess I've read Legends and Lattes, which does kind of skew romantasy, but I would like to try out the genre. I've been reluctant because a lot of popular romantasy are things that just don't feel like my taste, but perhaps Faebound could be it, and that could be the one to ingratiate me into the genre. The final book I have in this category is The City We Became, which is basically about the idea that New York has several different myths surrounding it, and these myths, which are like monsters and stuff, start awakening, and we follow New Yorkers as they try to protect their city. And this cover is another one where every time I see it in a bookstore, I just think it's so stunning. It has that kind of like glitch effect, which I would think is really difficult to do on a book, but I think it looks so nice and I really want to own it. And I've also asked for this for Christmas last year and unfortunately didn't receive it, but that's okay. But that's another one where every month so far I've looked at it and thought, should I use my monthly book on this? But I haven't thus far, but maybe I'll end up purchasing that later this year. But don't hold me to it. I should just really read it from the library because the library is a great resource. So those are all the books that I would love to buy but will not be buying, at least not in the immediate sense, due to my book buying restriction. But I do want to say that if you are considering buying a book, I really encourage you to see if your library has it first. Our libraries are truly one of the greatest resources we have available to us. And if you're too nervous to go into the library, most likely your library is a partner with Libby, which allows you to get digital copies of books for the Kindle or for your audiobook. Or you could also even get it downloaded on your phone and just read it on your phone. And that is a very accessible way to consume a book. I think it's really important that we all try to consume less because we are definitely in a overconsumption based society. And I think that books are definitely one of the ways that us in the book community can tend to overconsume. So when we can, trying to consume less or consume in sustainable ways is really important. And I'm not trying to say that in a way that's like I am the hero in restricting my books, because there are people who do full book buying bans, and also I've even acknowledged that these books I still want to buy. But I just think that it's important for me and important for my livelihood that I try to consume less, and I'm really particular about what I buy. I also think in doing this, I've noticed that it feels a lot more special when I buy a book. When I bought Legendborn, it was like such a big decision because that was the book for the month. And I have plenty of books that I'm still going through in my catalog, but that feeling of a new book in your hands is a really wonderful feeling, so I had to be very selective and courteous and careful when I was choosing. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this one, and if you did enjoy, please let me know what you thought and books that you would like to buy but you will not be due to your book restrictions or just because it's out of your price range or whatever reason. Or if you are still buying books, share the last book you bought and what made you feel like you should buy it. But that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching again, and I'll see you in the next one.